Hi, it's Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au. At this time every week we publish our Week in Real Estate newsletter, which goes out to our database of subscribers. It's a free weekly newsletter. If you're not getting it, you can go very easily sign up by going to the hotspotting.com.au website and signing up for our newsletter. It's a great way to stay informed about what's going on in real estate across Australia. This week's edition, one of our main stories talks about what's really happening with house prices across Australia, because there's been way too many headlines such as house prices falling across Australia, which simply isn't true. What those headlines actually mean, if they were being honest, is that the average across the capital cities is minus for the last 12 months because primarily Sydney is down, and the size of the Sydney market is bringing down the average. But beyond that, most of the cities in capital city Australia actually have prices that are at a higher level than they were 12 months ago. Hobart is still growing very strongly. According to the latest figures from CoreLogic, it's up 14% in annual terms. Canberra's going ahead strongly too. Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide also higher than they were 12 months ago, although only moderately. The figures also show that regional Australia, the average for regional Australia is up, and a number of locations such as Newcastle and Geelong, the Sunshine Coast, Launceston and Tasmania, Ballarat and Victoria, they're all up well above the average figure for regional Australia. So untrue to say that prices are falling across Australia. Most of the capital cities, they're still up compared to 12 months ago, and regional Australia is also up. And in the apartment market, the average for capital city Australia is an annual rise, and the average for regional Australia for apartments is also an annual rise. There's also a story in this week's edition of the Week in Real Estate, otherwise known as The Wire, which talks about an analysis from Deutsche Bank in which they say that they believe that the worst is over for the decline in the Sydney housing market. I thought that was interesting because they're the second major big name analyst to make that statement. Moody's Analytics a couple of weeks ago also said in a report they felt that the worst is over in terms of the decline, the price correction for the major markets in Sydney and Melbourne, and Deutsche Bank has come out and said something similar in a report this week. Not sure that I agree with them. It's only been a very, very short time frame in which we've seen the reversal in price movements in our two biggest cities, and I think there might be a little bit more of that to go. Nothing major, but a price correction before things return to what we might call normal. We also have a story referring to the fact that the most boring event of each month has taken place, the Reserve Bank board meeting, in which they once again, yet no great surprises, have kept the official interest rate on hold for I think it's 21 consecutive meetings now they've done that. We haven't seen a change for a couple of years. It's become a bit of a non-event, not only because they don't ever seem to make a change, but because the major lenders are going their own way in terms of the settings for mortgage rates, irrespective of what the Reserve Bank is doing. Other stories in this week's edition of the Week in Real Estate. There's an item on building approvals for residential property. What it shows is that building approvals overall peaked late in 2017 and been trending gradually downwards in 2018. But when you break it down, what it shows is that housing approvals are actually still up very strongly, and it's apartment approvals that are trending down. And we would expect that because there was a very, very high level of approvals for new apartment projects in the major cities of Australia for a number of years, and inevitably that's tapered off, partly because some of those inner city apartment markets in the bigger cities have become oversupplied, and there's no need to be bringing on big chunks of new apartments developments, but housing approvals still up strongly. And what appears to be taking place is a fairly moderate cooling of building approvals overall. Certainly that's the way the Housing Industry Association tends to see it. We have an item which refers to the level of stamp duty. We all know that's a big issue across Australia. According to a report from the Housing Industry Association, the revenue gained by state and territory governments from stamp duty has doubled in the last 8 years, and it's tripled in the 13 years since 2002. That's a massive increase. It's not indexed. They just keep charging stamp duty at the same rate because it's such a lovely source of revenue for them. And the importance of that is just a huge detrimental impact on our housing affordability across Australia. It really is something that needs to be addressed. I doubt it ever will be, because politicians are just addicted to this amazing source of revenue where they tax home ownership and property ownership, generally speaking. Something should be done, but I won't be holding my breath. This week's edition of the Week in Real Estate also has some digital things that you can click onto and watch and listen to. My hotspot location of the week report is in this week's edition of The Wire, where I focus on the city of Playford in the northern suburbs of South Australia, and also a podcast where I refer to the various predictions that are coming out of major entities about what's going to happen with prices, and compare it to actual reality. Media has a tendency to turn predictions into fact, particularly if they're sensationally negative ones, and that's what media does. So I hopefully bring a little bit of sanity and balance into the picture in terms of my comments on what's being predicted and the likely outcomes. So that's the Week in Real Estate. If you're not getting it, you should be, because it's a great way to stay informed, and it's free. You can sign up by going to the hotspotting.com.au website. That's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting signing off. Talk to you again soon.